A new week as an electric trucker started, and don't worry, I haven't switched to a diesel. I had to move a trailer that was still attached to a diesel truck. Pretty straightforward, just a bit louder. The annoying part was dealing with the trailer because the rear lights weren't working. In the end, I was told to just take another trailer. Thankfully, this one works fine, but I lost quite a bit of time. What's frustrating is that I don't know what caused the issue. Anyway, everything's working now, and I'm back on the road. Today's journey is going to be a pretty long one, heading south of Stuttgart. But the time I lost earlier means I'll arrive later at the rest stop tonight, and it will get harder to find a spot for the night. I'm now loaded with 10 tons of plants, heading south of Stuttgart. It's over 800 kilometers or 500 miles, so I won't make it all the way today and will unload tomorrow. I've got a full 4.5 hours of driving time, and I left with 80% battery. My first destination is in the middle of the Kassel Mountains, so I'll be climbing a few hills. The conditions are ideal, great weather, a pleasant 22 degrees Celsius. Let's see how far I can get today. With only 10 tons on board, axle loads aren't an issue for me right now. And while I struggle with having as little weight as possible on the rear axle with a full load, the Channel Diesel TV has the exact opposite problem with his Scania V8. He needs to load as much weight as possible onto the rear axle. He even has a piggyback forklift, which is exactly what I need. My dispatcher recently asked if I'd be interested in running with one, but my first thought was, I'm not hanging a diesel forklift on an electric truck. So I've already reached out to a company to see if I could test electric ones. At first I thought that might be a downside because an electric forklift would be heavier than a diesel one. However, forklifts need a certain amount of weight to operate, and I've learned that piggyback forklifts often have built-in weights for balance. With an electric forklift, that weight is the battery, which is really convenient. The only question is whether it's worth it financially. Unlike an electric truck, where lower energy and maintenance costs quickly pay off, the running costs for a piggyback forklift are negligible since it's used so infrequently. I'm not sure if the investment would make sense, but I still think it's a fantastic idea. Now it's time for the Kassel Mountains. Overtaking trucks at 80 kilometers or 50 miles per hour isn't anything extraordinary, but it still amazes me every time. There's a gap coming up, and when I hit the accelerator, the power the truck delivers is just unbelievable. I know I've said this so many times, but I genuinely think this is the most powerful production truck you can currently buy. No V8, no Scania, no Volvo, or any massive combustion engine can match it. This truck is the strongest, and it's just so much fun to drive. The truck even accelerates up to 90 kilometers per hour, keeping pace with the cars, which aren't going faster anyway. Up ahead, there's a nice hill, so let's test the maximum recuperation power. It peaks at 607 kilowatts, which is pretty impressive, to be honest. I've mentioned in previous videos that the power drops off as the speed decreases. That's because this truck has a single-speed transmission, meaning the drivetrain is always directly connected to the wheels across the entire RPM range. It drives incredibly smoothly, but has a few trade-offs, like not being able to shift gears to increase recuperation. On the flip side, it climbs hills effortlessly without needing to shift. It just powers straight up. This truck really feels the closest to an electric car. Mercedes, for example, uses an e-axle with gears in their e-actros. Their logic is that the motor can always operate at its optimal RPM, making it more efficient. But honestly, I don't think it is a huge consumption difference for electric trucks. So prioritizing driving comfort is just as important. I've just arrived at the rest stop after driving about 300 kilometers or 186 miles. It's been exactly 4 hours. While this is the main truck stop, there's a dedicated charging park for trucks at the Aral station nearby. I've been there before, and it was super tight. Let's see if it's really as cramped as I remember when maneuvering with a truck. Technically, I should drive through the gas station, but it's completely packed. This setup really isn't well thought out. It's great that they built this charging area, but now I've got to somehow squeeze past the cars. And to top it off, there's a construction zone too. I'm always happy to see new truck charging stations, but this one clearly wasn't tested by anyone actually driving a truck. To charge here, you have to squeeze through a narrow gas station, drive against the designated direction, and then figure out where to park. And these are supposed to be drive-through spots, but imagine 2 trucks parked at the back and they'd need to exit through here. I got lucky it wasn't busy today, but this isn't how you design a truck charging station. Still, I'm charging at 300 kilowatts, didn't have to unhitch, and we're learning as we go. There was an agro truck from Fliegl driving ahead of me. It's an alternative to a tractor, a kind of off-road capable truck that can transport multiple trailers. Of course, it has its downsides, but in today's world, if tractor manufacturers don't step up with good electric tractors, you just go with something like this, put on some off-road tires, and while you might not be able to do everything in the field, you can still handle a lot. What's really needed now is all-wheel drive. which I think is only a matter of time for electric trucks. Cutting time too close is really not recommended. I lost 10 minutes because there's apparently some construction work somewhere. Now I've got 2 hours and 2 minutes left to my destination and 2 hours and 3 minutes of driving time left. But I've got some good news. I see a blue notification here, which means there's a software update available. But since I know this truck very well, I'll wait until the end of the week to do the update. Maybe the update will fix all the issues and make it the perfect vehicle for long-haul trucking. I don't really believe that myself, but hey, one can hope. I'm almost there, and it's gotten pretty dark by now, and I've noticed a critical issue with the truck that absolutely needs fixing. The brake lights don't activate during regeneration braking. Let me quickly demonstrate. There's no car behind me now, so I'll engage full regeneration braking. Now for comparison, I'll press the brake pedal instead. Apparently there are 2 Aral gas stations here. One has hyperchargers, but the actual Aral pulse location is further back. I've got exactly 4 minutes of driving time left, so I need to carefully figure out where to park. I'll quickly stop here with my hazard lights on to scout ahead. I've arrived in Bonndorf, and taking a moment to scout ahead was a great move. There were some enticing Aral pulse chargers with drive-through access, but they had a car-only symbol. Knowing there are dedicated truck charging spots, I checked around and found them where all the trucks are parked. I'm now in one of 2 truck bays. It's a dream scenario, finishing the day at a charging station and waking up with a full battery. Today, I drove 756 kilometers or about 470 miles, and I even had more driving time left. That's comparable to a diesel truck, but driving time limits were the real cap. That said, the day came at a cost. I got flashed by a speed camera. I'd assumed trucks were safe from those on the highway, but it turns out modern speed cameras can detect vehicle types. Lesson learned. It's been a long day, and I'm totally wiped out. Forgive me, but I'm going to stay here for the night. From midnight to 7 a.m., demand at these chargers should be minimal. There's still room for another truck and 2 cars here, and further up, 8 cars can charge. I'll take my dog for a quick walk and then crash into bed. Good morning. It was a short night, but surprisingly refreshing. If there were more charging locations like this, it would be fantastic. So far, this journey has been incredibly comfortable. I never had to unhitch the trailer. I'll try to keep it that way until the end to prove that this setup works well. Now I'm heading to the first delivery point, where the trailer will already be half unloaded. I'm currently driving through Reutlingen, having already completed my first delivery at a tree nursery. Honestly, transporting plants and trees is so enjoyable, because the people you meet are always in such a good mood. I don't know if it's because gardening is such a fulfilling profession, or if it's the fresh air, or just today's nice weather, but they're always super friendly and curious about the truck, how it works, and its range. It's such a positive experience and really boosts your mood. What I also love is the challenge of tricky delivery spots. The first one had a steep hill and winding roads through a small village. That's where the trailer with the steering axle is worth its weight in gold. Sometimes I was navigating just centimeters from the curb, and the system is flawless. It locks the steering axle automatically when reversing, which makes maneuvering so much easier. I have to say, these kinds of delivery challenges are really fun. Driving from ramp to ramp or warehouse to warehouse would get pretty dull in the long run. I've wrapped up all my tasks for the day, and I just saw something I've never encountered before. A tractor unit with 3 axles and a trailer with 5 axles, clearly built for heavy loads. My deliveries are done, so I've driven back north to Bonndorf, where I stayed last night. I've already received tomorrow's pickup destination. It's near Stuttgart. Since I'm at 100% charge, I'll drive a bit closer to the area so I can save time tomorrow and make the most of my driving hours. I've also received information about my next destination, Bremerhaven, meaning I'll be traveling across Germany again. Tomorrow morning, I'll load up and see if I can make it there within my 10 hours of driving time. Do you remember Age of Empires? I was totally hooked on it as a kid. In that game, you started with an empty map and had to explore to reveal everything. Driving electric trucks feels a lot like that. When you're driving a route for the first time, you have to scout it out, find charging stations, and figure things out as you go. But after you've driven it a few times and added the stations to your charging map, it becomes so much easier. That's why the route through the Castle Mountains to Bremerhaven doesn't feel like a challenge anymore. I'm at a small truck stop east of Stuttgart, where I'll spend the night before picking up my cargo in the morning. It's pretty straightforward. You drive in, pay €8 for parking, and settle in. When I arrived, I spotted a whole fleet of 300 kilowatt Alpitronic chargers by Stadtwerke Stuttgart. Unfortunately, the charging cables aren't cooled, but of course I'm charging anyway. It's a bit pricey at 64 cents per kilowatt hour, but I'm only topping up a few percent so I can start the day strong tomorrow. The setup here is really convenient. You can drive through, park your trailer, and find a good spot for your truck. Plus, you get 2 hours of free parking. Today is shower day, so I put on my running clothes and went for a jog. I'm near Turkheim, and it's absolutely stunning here. There's a big hill covered in vineyards with a massive winery, and the grapes taste amazing. You can enjoy a gorgeous sunset here. I think I can just make out the truck stop in the distance. Now I'll head back down the hill and return to the truck. The sunset this evening is breathtaking, and I love running without my phone because it's just extra weight I don't need, and it's mental training to remember where to turn and how to find my way back. I run until I reach the halfway mark of the time I've planned, then turn around and retrace my steps. No GPS needed. It's surprisingly effective, and it's a great way to stay mentally and physically fit while breaking up the routine of staring at the road all day. I was just heading to the gas station to brush my teeth, and look what I found. These two Mercedes e-Actros 300 showed up overnight. This is the same logistics company that made a big fuss a few weeks ago about them getting 4 electric trucks when they operate thousands of trucks. But hey, every step counts. What I'll definitely take from this is an idea for my Iveco. Even though mine has a longer wheelbase, using extended charging arms to reverse up to the station could solve the problem of cables getting in the way of the door. I'll definitely test that out next time. I bet they have a deal here with the Stuttgart city utilities. Maybe the company is based nearby and can charge at a discounted rate overnight. I think we'll see tons of partnerships like this between transport companies and charging station operators in the future. When I start the Iveco, it always plays what I call its battery symphony. When it powers up, it sequentially activates all 9 high-voltage batteries, and instead of all clicking on at once, they do in a pattern. It's honestly one of the most beautiful sounds I've ever heard. I've got a few favorite sounds like the Tesla autopilot chime when you activate it. That hasn't changed in 10 years because it's so well designed, but my absolute favorite has to be the clicking of those battery relays. We're loaded now with some fairly large packages. I'd say I've got about 13 loading meters, with 2 meters left at the back for the empty containers I still have on board. The new load added roughly 9 meters, but it's not very heavy with only 6 tons, and was easy to secure. Perfect cargo. Now it's off to Bremerhaven. On the way, I'll drop off the empty containers, which is my biggest concern right now. According to the navigation system, I'll arrive just before 5 p.m., but I'll still need to take a 45-minute driving break along the way. I'll give them a call to check if they can still unload me after 5 p.m. If not, I might just unload it myself as a last resort. Since I've driven this route a few times before, I'll charge at the same truck charging station as on the way here. It's a bit tricky to access, but this time I'll approach it from above, and that should work perfectly. I've got 3 hours and 38 minutes left to drive over 300 kilometers or 186 miles, with 3 hours and 46 minutes of driving time remaining, leaving me a 7-minute buffer. It's looking good as long as nothing unexpected happens. If I can reach the charging station as planned, I'll only need 1 charging stop to get to my first unloading point. From there, I might even make it close to Bremerhaven. Whether I get all the way there today doesn't matter too much since I can't unload until tomorrow. It's amazing how you can easily drive an electric truck across the country when you know where to stop and charge. I made it through this leg of the trip pretty well, though there was a bit of stop-and-go traffic which cost me about 2 minutes. Now I've got 4 minutes left on my driving time, and the destination is just 2 minutes away. You could almost say it was another perfect stretch. One thing I've learned in the Castle Mountains is that it's not just trucks avoiding the route because they can't make it up the inclines. You also see a lot of caravan drivers and motorhomes struggling with the climb. Where I plan to park is already another truck, but it's not an electric truck. It's an older V8 Scania. But since the area up ahead looks clear, I'll just swing around and park next to it. No point in waiting or arguing. I ran into the driver when I was reparking and he was super friendly. He knew that trucks can charge here and parked that way because there's usually a Volvo that charges on the right. He was totally fine with me parking there and moved his truck. Today was an awesome day. Everything went perfectly from the start. Friendly warehouse workers, quick loading, easy load securing. From Stuttgart to Würzburg, there was almost no traffic, blue skies, 20 degrees Celsius, and good music in the truck. I can already tell that there's a bit of the old-school trucker romance to this job. Around Kassel, the traffic picked up a bit, but I still had fun overtaking trucks and caravans. I've been a professional driver for 6 weeks now, driving the most powerful truck in Europe. It's a blast, and I'm really grateful to Nanno Janssen for trusting me and giving me so much freedom. I can even take my dog with me. How awesome is that? So here I am, driving from Stuttgart to Bremerhaven in 1 day, with a charging stop in between, maybe 2. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to realize how far we've come, how much we're experiencing. This battery electric logistics world is so exciting, and I've found my passion for it. I'm now in Höchsterheide, and everything worked out well, but unfortunately there was a bit of traffic. This means I won't make it all the way to Bremerhaven, so I'm aiming to make it to the first charging station, and then, before I go off course or end up somewhere unfamiliar, I'll just park at a regular rest stop for the night. Tomorrow, I'll unload and maybe charge again after unloading. The most important thing is done. I made it to the unloading spot. They usually close at 6 p.m., but since it's peak season at the nursery, they were still operating at 7 p.m. They were super nice and unloaded everything quickly. I'm now at the Huntertal rest area. Last time, I had some charging issues, and today I plugged in as usual. And for some reason, it's only delivering about 200 kilowatt. Anyway, I've got enough time, so I'm charging it to 100%. I've never charged with EnBW before, but I've signed up for the most expensive subscription model, and it saves me almost 100 euros for only half a charge. It's crazy when you think about the massive amounts of energy that go into these trucks. I'm about to reposition the truck, spend the night here, and unload tomorrow. Then we'll see what the day brings. I considered using the 50 kilowatt charger, since there are still 2 other CCS chargers here, and EnBW has a limited blocking fee of 12 euros. I thought about testing it, but since I have enough time to reposition, I'm skipping it today. I think I drove around 650 kilometers, or 400 miles today, which isn't as much as I'd hoped, as traffic slowed me down a lot. I'm now in Bremerhaven and finished unloading at the terminal. I've already received the info for my next leg. Instead of a long-distance trip, I'm heading back to Oldenburg, which is about an hour from Bremerhaven. From there, I'll be doing a direct route to Emden and then heading back to the yard in the evening. So, no need for any charging on the way, which is nice because charging at the yard is obviously the cheapest. I'm now at the next loading point, and I'm going to be loaded with newspapers. There's one Nanno Janssen truck ahead of me, and behind me, there's another one as well. I took a walk with the dog and spotted one of the coolest cars ever, the Nissan ENV 200. I actually drove one of these as a camper for 2 or 3 years, and I'm a huge fan of this car. It's incredibly efficient, with a lot of space inside. It's quite narrow, and it has good performance since it uses the same drivetrain as the Nissan Leaf, but with a lower top speed, making it accelerate faster. The only downside to the car is the charging tech. I used to have to do some tricks to get it to charge properly. There's a cable that lets you charge with a regular wall box, but there's a trick where you can extend one of the pins with a paper clip, since one of the pins is shorter than the other. This one has an adapter from Type 1 to Type 2, which is basically what I used to do with the paperclip. There is even a Dutch company doing conversions where you can retrofit the ENV and the Leaf with a CCS port. If you need a practical city car, definitely check it out. It's a real classic. The only issue is long-distance driving. Unlike the Leaf, it has battery cooling, but after the second or third quick charge, it does get too hot, and the charging speed drops significantly. But overall, I think it's awesome. Every electric car is something positive for the world. I'm now loaded with newspapers. Since we had a bit of waiting time, I got a small tour of the printing facility and saw how everything gets sorted. It was pretty cool, especially since my first job was delivering newspapers on a bike. Back then, they'd just drop off the papers in front of the house and I had to sort the flyers myself. My parents and friends can still tell stories about me sorting the papers, always with black hands from the ink. Now I saw a machine that automatically sorts the flyers, so there's been some progress in the last 15 years. There were a lot of pallets with newspapers stacked in bundles, and the forklift placed them in the back. Then I had to take them to the front, using a pallet jack, and sort everything myself. It was pretty tiring, but on the bright side, it's like a free workout. But there are some tricks to make things easier. You can manually adjust the trailer height with the air suspension to make it easier to push the bundles toward the back. When I unload, I'll reverse the process, so it'll be easier to push them forward. Now I'm driving to my next stop, and soon the day will be done. The second workout is done too. All the pallets are unloaded, and I'm seeing these large warehouses for the first time at Nanno Janssen, including the one with a workshop at the back. There's also a moving company, so they use 7.5-ton trucks and sprinter vans. Really a logistics powerhouse here. The newspapers are unloaded, sorted, and then the Sprinter vans, which used to deliver to me, pick them up and take them to the distribution points. It's cool to see the whole logistics chain in action. I haven't driven a Sprinter yet, but I've done pretty much everything else. Tomorrow will be a local delivery day, not a long haul, so it'll likely be a bit easier tomorrow, but local delivery can be more tiring with all the loading and unloading. Long distance driving is hard in a different way, but that's all part of the job. Now I'll head back, take my dog for a walk, and then call it a day. The only thing cooler than accelerating with 42 tons is accelerating with no load. Too bad I can't keep going here because there's a speed camera ahead. I've arrived back at the yard, recharged, and even went shopping. Now that I'm back at the truck, I noticed that the nice blue cloud has popped up again.
Okay, let's give it a try.
The navigation system still doesn't have a search field, so it's still not fully functional. It's now version 5.162, definitely a different version. The update worked, but I won't go searching for improvements tonight. I'll just let it surprise me tomorrow during my drive. Maybe something new will stand out. I was really hoping to see a feature like in the Nikola videos, where it displays battery temperature. At least the update worked. I'll find out tomorrow if it brought any real improvements or changes. I'm now in Emden with a DAF XF diesel truck. I'm filling in for another driver's, so I'm quickly loading it. I actually enjoy doing things like this. It's a chance to experience how normal trucks operate. I'm so immersed in the world of e-mobility that it's refreshing to step back and see what diesel trucks are still capable of. This one's got some years on it, with over 600,000 kilometers under its belt. The truck drives perfectly, and there's something enjoyable about driving a diesel truck every once in a while. The low rumble you notice during acceleration, especially in city traffic, almost disappears on the highway, where wind noise drowns out most of it. So, on longer trips, the difference isn't as pronounced. I just did a full acceleration test, and while the 460 horsepower engine isn't underpowered, the interruptions in traction caused by the manual gearbox take away a lot of the fun. With about 7 tons loaded, it takes a solid minute to get to 60 kilometers per hour, and most trucks out there aren't particularly overpowered either. Only a few have V8 engines or 500, 600, or even 650 horsepower. This experience really highlights the huge gap between diesel and electric trucks. For anyone who hasn't driven an electric truck, I highly recommend trying it. It's a completely different world. That said, this truck has nearly 700,000 kilometers on it, so it's safe to say it's done its job well, even if it might not be delivering the full 460 horsepower anymore. Electric trucks still need to prove they can reach such high mileage. One fun thing about this truck, though, is it has adaptive cruise control, which my Iveco doesn't. You're probably wondering why I ended up driving the DAF in the first place. It's a lowliner, meaning the chassis is much lower, which allows it to transport taller trailers. These trailers can have adjustable heights, and this one has an interior height of 3 meters, something that's very common in automotive logistics. With the Scania, it barely works. With the Iveco, it's definitely not possible. That's why I had to use the DAF. Battery size is still a challenge for electric lowliners, though. I think MAN is one of the first manufacturers to officially offer an electric lowliner. Designwork also has a solution with some modifications, but it comes with relatively small battery capacities. The next big hurdle will be designing flatter batteries, so electric trucks can also function as lowliners. Right now, most electric trucks can only handle standard trailers. But in automotive logistics, like here at VW or with other suppliers, lowliners are the absolute standard, and that's why I had to drive one today. There's been great progress with the solar installation here. All the modules are mounted, and now it's just down to the final wiring. You can still see the cables hanging down, so I'll head over soon to check out the inverters. It's incredible how quickly the area has been transformed into a mini power plant. Here in North Frisia, I've really become a huge fan of the cows here. So many are free range, living the most idyllic life. It got me thinking. It could have been amazing to set this up as a dual-use system, raising the panels so cows could graze underneath. That would have been the ultimate combo. But even as it is, it's a great setup. Here we're a bit closer to the panels, and you can see they're all perfectly installed. 7 rows, all facing south for optimal efficiency. The panels are glass, which makes them pretty heavy, but they use the standard MC4 connectors, so they're quick and easy to link together. Each panel is rated at 700 watts, so you could calculate the kilowatts each row can generate. It's also interesting to see the junction boxes on the panels with a plus and minus terminal. If they were closer together, you could connect them directly, but here you likely need a short connection cable. Inside these junction boxes, there are bypass diodes. These are essential because if one cell is shaded, the current flow could stop and the entire panel wouldn't generate power. The diodes allow individual strings or rows to bypass shaded cells, which is particularly handy in partial shading situations. I got pretty familiar with this stuff when I built the solar panel for my car, so it's fun to see it in action here. Honestly, it's amazing to see this entire solar power station here, and knowing it'll charge trucks later is just the coolest thing. It's hard to put into words how exciting this is. I just caught up with Alwyn and Christopher from Enexum, who are managing this whole setup, and they confirmed a lot of what I suspected. There are 5 inverters, each with 20 inputs, allowing 20 strings to be connected. Each string is limited to 100 volts. Since each panel produces around 48 to 50 volts, 20 panels are connected in series per string. The cables from these strings run to the inverters, go underground, and then return to connect to the grid. Each cable is labeled, and connectors are custom made for each one. They even do a resistance check to ensure the connections are solid before plugging them in below. The setup process is guided by a detailed plan, almost like a Lego instruction manual. This way, installers can't make mistakes, and everything is measured and verified for accuracy. From there, the power runs via thick cables to a distribution or safety room, and then onto the transformer. The total capacity here is 648 kilowatts. One cool detail, these are bifacial modules, meaning they can produce power from both the front and the back. They were chosen because they cost the same as standard panels, so it's an easy upgrade. If sunlight reflects off the ground and hits the back of the panels, they can generate extra power. And now, the grand finale with this cover for the charging port on the Iveco. I got so many messages about this, and some were really wild. Mattis designed a cover for the CCS port, and Alexander made it out of flexible plastic. And here it is, a flexible plastic cover, which can be bent a little and seals the port really well. It also has a small handle and the Electro Trucker logo on it. It's super cool, and he even sent me more prototypes. But this one is just perfect. This fidgety thing that hung down with AC and DC separated, which didn't really make sense on this truck, has now been replaced with something much, much better. I couldn't have imagined it any better, and I'm now excited every time I get to charge. Big thanks to them and to everyone who watched the videos. I hope you enjoyed getting a glimpse into my week, and I'll see you next time.